It's your boy Matt Arrington, also known as Mr. No Offense to Some, and I'm here today with another awesome interview. We have today with us Obsouleet. So we're gonna find out more about him. Let's go, Mr. Obsouleet. Thank you again for joining us today. Like I said, we'd like to start at the beginning. So let's find out where you originally from, born and raised, boss.
Crazy story, man. I was actually born in Alaska. I was a military brat growing up. Although I wasn't real close to my family and stuff, we moved around a lot. When I was a kid, I was born in Alaska. I lived there for a couple years. Lived in New York State for a long time. Washington State for a few years. But spent most of my life in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, man. Out of the 34 years I've been on this earth, I've spent about 18, 19 years in Hopkinsville total. So I always say that's my hometown, man. That's where I kind of grew up a lot, made a lot of memories and stuff. So
Facts, facts. Okay, that's you're the first person I've had on the show born in Alaska. So or even been around that part. Have you been there recently, or can you remember what it was like growing up there, man? I imagine it's hella cold, right?
I've seen some videos, home videos when I was a kid. I unfortunately haven't been back since I've become an adult, but it's definitely on my bucket list of places I want to go see. Just the pictures and videos I saw, just it looks amazing. So I definitely want to go check it out sometime, later on in life for sure.
For sure, boss. At what age did you move from Alaska, and where did you go first? I know you said there's been a couple places in there. Being a military brat, I know you got to go where your parents are stationed. So, where are some of the places that you might have remembered, going from
So
after Alaska?
So my father got out of the military for a few years. When he did, we left Alaska and we went to New York.
Mhm.
I lived in a town called Little Valley, New York, Randolph, New York, very small, Western New York, almost closer to Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
Lived there for a few years. I think we moved to Washington State when I was about 7. And I stayed in Washington till I was almost 10. And then that was the first time we moved to Kentucky. I was in the middle of 4th grade actually when we first moved to Kentucky. And I stayed in Kentucky until the end of my 5th grade year. And then I wound up moving back to New York due to circumstances at home, things like that with the family. I wound up moving to New York to go live with my grandmother for a few years. So I moved up there with her from the time I was about 10 to a little over 14. And those were the most like pivotal moments of my life. Like that was really me growing into a man, learning who I was as a person, finally having people around me who loved me, kind of like a parent is supposed to. Like I said, my family life was never really great growing up. I lost my grandmother in 2008, and still to this day, almost 13 years later, I think, or I'm sorry, almost 15 years later, I still think about her, daily. So yeah, that was where I lived there, like I said, so I was about 14, and then I decided to move back to Kentucky. And then that's pretty much where I've spent my life since then. I've lived a couple years in Missouri and a couple years back in New York as an adult when I was having kids. But like I said, man, Kentucky, it's had most of my life.
I got you. I got you. That in those different markets, I know the music is different. From those different places that you bop, you kind of bop too. It varies differently, especially when you're going, in the New York area, you got that boom bap kind of feel that's unique to their area. Then you've got, Kentucky, where honestly, I've heard a little, I've heard a little everything come out of Kentucky, man. Shout out to you, shout out to you, the awesome lyricists that are out there, especially with them making a big name right now as well with the guy who sings First Class, Jack Harlow.
Yep.
Definitely, putting him on the map recently
What's
as well.
crazy about that is too, his dude Ctez, man. I actually just met him on December 17th. Uh, got my ice cream and cake from him, for my birthday, man. My buddy, shout out Justin Reese Records, FTB. That's my dudes up in Louisville, man. He had Ctez come out and host his show that he put together. Um, awesome, super dope dude, man. And I tell you what, after meeting him personally, a lot of people see this dude's videos online and stuff. That man's energy is real. Like that man walked in the building and it radiated off of him. You felt the temperature almost change in the building when he walked in. It was wild, man.
Man, man, just it's just amazing to have such a, you know, a firsthand experience in those areas, especially with you having a profession such as music. You know what I'm saying? Where it's highly influenced by those different areas, respectively.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen you've done work with people like Chris Calico, but we're gonna get to that here in a moment. Uh, but just how did music help, you know, carry you through those times? You know, music is something that sits close to our heart, and I know what you're going through, the things that you were going through growing up. Sometimes we find that relative, you know, that relation that we're missing in the music from the things that we listen to and things like that. So what did music up until that point, you know what I'm saying, before you came back to Kentucky, you know, right after 14, uh what role did music play in your life going in there? Were you heavy into it at that time, or was it just something that was just kind of on, or, you know, where was music in your life at this time?
So when I lived with my grandmother, that was the first time I really started doing any kind of music, like not necessarily like I do now, but getting involved with music. I sung in church a lot. My grandmother had me singing in church choirs. I was in the choir in school for a couple of years, just singing, you know, church things, stuff like that. That was really when I kind of first started developing the passion for it, I guess. But when I was about 10, almost 11 years old, I heard my first hip hop record, Notorious Thugs by Bone Thugs and Harmony and B.I.G. That was the first time I ever heard hip hop. Like, I grew up, my family was country and 80s hair bands. Like, that's all I had ever known. And I was actually on my way to church one day. My aunt was dropping me off and she was listening to that. And I just remember feeling this like sense of newness. Like, what is this? I have never heard this before. So immediately discovered this new genre of music and I went full fledged. I mean, I dove in as deep as I could go with that. From there, I went and instantly found DMX. I was living in New York, like I said at the time. So DMX was one of the first artists that, you know, came across my radar. Uh, from there, a lot more Bone Thugs and Harmony, a lot more BIG, a little bit of West Coast stuff. Like, I really just started diving into hip hop like full fledged. It really finally felt like I had a music genre that I appreciated, that wasn't something from my past or wasn't something I was raised on, but really just kind of resonated with me in its own way. And through that, from I'm probably that age on, man, if you didn't see me with a pair of headphones around my neck, something was probably wrong. Like, everywhere I went, whether it was school, church, you know, hanging out with friends, might not be playing music, but my headphones were on, like, everywhere I went. And through that, I started writing poetry as I got a little older. Music, like I said, it was always my go-to. It was easy to put the headphones on and tune the world out. You know, like I said, my childhood wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great either. So music was always kind of my getaway. And through that, that's where the poetry started, because I realized I'm very eloquent with my words. I'm very well spoken. So I started writing poetry kind of about my life and just kind of how I was feeling. A few of them I posted. There used to be a website called All Poetry. I posted a couple on that website. More of it was just more personal for me, kind of like almost like a journal. And then through that, down the road, whenever I first stepped into a studio and first started making music, I think that is what helped me with the transition into doing so, because I was already writing, already kind of writing on a rhyme scheme to a point. So it all kind of came back for full circle the first time I ever stepped into a studio.
Speaking of the first time you stepped into a studio, was it what you expected?
Man, it was intimidating. I'm not gonna lie, it was cool. Lucky for me, it was a buddy of mine I went to high school with. His older brother had a studio at the house. I'd been fooling around, freestyling, just, you know, kind of, like I said, music's always been a big part of my life. So I realized I could kind of freestyle off the top of my head and kind of keep up. You know, I wasn't no Little Wayne with the freestyles, you know, but I did decent. So through that, he was like, "Man, my brother's got a studio. You know, you and him should link up." So I went over there and met him for the first time, and we were all standing in the studio, and he's got his big MIDI keyboard. We've been standing there talking for probably 30 minutes or so, and he's like, "Man, you've seen Hustle and Flow, right?" I was like, "Of course, man. You know, who hasn't?" And he's like, "Watch this." And he starts playing Whoop That Trick on the keyboard, and he's playing it and playing it. And sure enough, we just start this little freestyle cipher with everybody in there, you know, kind of kicking bars. And through that, I think we all kind of got inspired and decided, all right, we're going to, you know, make a track. So my buddy was working on a beat while we were all kind of sitting there writing some stuff. And the first song I ever did, it was a song called Hop Town. And it was basically all of us talking about our hometown, man, and our love for Hop Town and our love for Kentucky, and how, we're not the first people that, Kentucky really isn't thought of a whole lot, when it comes to music. We're known for horse races and liquor, like that's what Kentucky's known for. But there's so much talent, man. I see it all the time when I go back there and do shows, and there's so many lyrical and just great talent in Kentucky. And like you said earlier, man, it's so vastly different, and just we're a giant melting pot, man.
Definitely, man. Especially kind of winging into this Calico situation. The Midwest, man, definitely has its own sound.
Yeah,
It just has its own sound. That's the best way I can describe it. It's just the Midwest, like but how did you go from listening from the things like Notorious Thug, which, by the way, as that being an introduction to hip hop, man, that I don't know too many better ways to get introduced. I mean, the bounce to that song, the lyricism to that song, the way you got the contrast and the different rhyme schemes on that song is just it's a highly infectious song. If they play it anywhere right now, I'm gonna stick around to at least the first, second verse.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But how do you go from hearing Bone Thugs, which I can kind of see, to the likes around Chris Calico, because they're just a whole different, totally different game when it comes to strange music. Like they are
Yeah.
wild, the limits that they push. I gotta give it to Tech and the whole crew over there, man. They really press those bounds to try to think outside the box. And I noticed when I was going through your library that you do have a track with Chris Calico. You may have a couple, but the one I saw, it did say featuring Chris Calico, and I thought, man, this guy he's really got it, because when you step in a room to record with these guys, if you listen to Chris Calico, the lyricism is there. They're definitely going to bring that wordplay. They're definitely going to bring that skill. And I was just really thoroughly impressed after hearing the track. How did that opportunity come to fruition for you?
So shout out to Wishmaster Beats for that opportunity, man. I wish I could sit here and say like I personally got the opportunity to meet Chris Calico and get in the studio and all of that. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Wishmaster did this beat collaboration pack where Chris Calico recorded a couple songs, and then I through that purchased it, and that's how that came about. And what's crazy is I knew who Wishmaster was, but I never really realized how much involved and how many people he had actually produced for. And before that beat packet came out, I had actually just bought a whole folder of beats from him probably 3 months prior to that. And then after that beat packet released, I wound up performing a show in Nashville where I got the chance to meet Wishmaster and perform one of my songs that I did on one of his beats while
Wow.
he was there watching, which was crazy to me. Like, knowing, I'm about to go up here and this dude's been in the room with Tech Nine and Nelly and Chris Calicos, and now I'm up here on this stage doing something on one of his beats. So it was really crazy, man. And that opportunity really, I jumped on that opportunity because Chris Calico is one of those people. He was heavily influenced, in my life. There's a lot of times I've turned to his music, in some of my darker moments. So when that opportunity arose, not saying I'd never have the chance to be on a song with Chris Calico,
No, I
but
get you.
to have that opportunity then like I did, it was too good to pass up.
Facts. Some things, yeah, man. It's about, some things are about the art, man. The fact that you're able to be on the track together, with just those two, with your lyricism, his lyricism, and the track is so cohesive, man. It's a work of art. I
I
got it.
appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So as far as you, like you said, let's go back. You were in studio. You guys decided, hey, let's go ahead and lay down this track. I think we all go through that phase where you get your first track mixed, or even if you get it mixed, because a lot of times we be excited, like, what I'm saying, you got to record it, you just want, just give it to me, I don't even care if it's out, what I'm saying, I don't even, it's not even mixed, just give it to me where I can hear me on it, what I'm saying. How did your journey in becoming an artist change from the time that you heard that first track, where you're just on it, to producing your first mix and mastered track that sounds radio ready? And
Honestly, man, I tell people all the time, there's been 3 moments in my life where I finally felt like I was at home. The first time was when I was a kid and I lived with my grandmother. I finally felt like I was at home. I felt loved. I felt that, that feeling that you have when you're around and where you're supposed to be. The second time was the first time I ever stepped into a studio. When I got in that vocal booth and got in front of that microphone, yeah, it was intimidating, but it was almost like I was meant to be there. Just the feeling that I had coming over my body was insane. And then my kids being born, when both of my kids were born, and my family was kind of completed, so to speak, like I felt like home again. And all of those experiences, yes, vastly different, in its own right, all were very similar in that feeling that I had like this is what I'm meant to be doing. Through that, the guy I did the first song with, him and I were part of a group for years. We dropped a couple mixtapes. He was my engineer, and he produced all the beats and all of that stuff, and I just kind of rapped. Kind of sat in the box with him and watched, as he mixed and mastered and things like that. And through that, picked up a lot of things that I didn't realize I was learning at the time. Fast forward some years, him and I kind of fell out and went and did our own thing. I actually walked away from music for a while, and really had to have a come to Jesus meeting, as I like to call them, with myself. Kind of, is this what I still want to do? And that was when I really realized this isn't what I want to do, but kind of who I am. And I'm kind of cheating myself, if I don't continue pursuing this. So through that, like I said, that was how I learned to mix and master myself, because I didn't, when I started doing music again, I know I didn't want to do it on anybody else's time or anybody else's say so. Like I wanted to do it my way. I wanted to make music that I wanted to make, even if it meant I had to do it all. So the first couple tracks I did, I mixed and mastered myself, and I go back now and listen to them, and I'm like, man, what was I thinking? Like I rushed that so hard, and now, I mean, my engineering skills aren't, you know, as great as they could be, but I know I can get it sounding good enough that you can listen to my song in a car, on your phone, wherever you listen to, and you're not getting horrible feedback. You could still hear me well over the beat. So it's like I never claimed to be an engineer, but I had to learn that trade in order to continue doing what I'm doing.
right, it's and hats off to you, by the way, for taking it upon yourself to learn that, because um I mix as well. I'm gonna tell you, for those who've passed it, like how to do it now, and for those who've never done it, it's not just moving levers on a board. Like
No.
it's
And
not.
you could have a song that you absolutely loved when you recorded it, and by the time you're done mixing and mastering it, you don't ever want to hear the song again. You've done listened to it 1,000 times, on the computer, burning it to a CD to take it out to the car so you could check your levels, and then, oh shit, I need to turn this up and turn this down. So then it's back in the lab, and there's a couple songs like that, like "Disappear." I think is the one you're talking about with the Chris Calico feature. That song I recorded probably 5 different times, just trying to get it to sound how I wanted to. I did it in my studio. I went and recorded it with a guy in Hoptown, and wasn't really feeling how it came out there. So I went and re-recorded it myself again, and put the mix and master on it and all of that. And that was one of those, like, I love that song. When I wrote it immediately, it was one of my favorite songs I had ever done. And by the time I was done with it, I didn't even listen to it for like probably 3 months because I was just so burnt out on it.
Yeah, it gets intimate trying to get that mix together. So that's why. But one thing I will say, and I will point out, I'm glad that you actually hinted at it, is when you go back though. I think a lot of times when progress is happening, it's happening at because we don't know what to expect. We don't know to watch it, so it's easier to see when you look back. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
And like when you said, if you listen to the mix that you did when you first started, now because of your experience and your professionalism now and where it's at and your skill level where it's at now, you can hear it and probably and being honest, like that's something you get to a point where you listen to it and you're like, I know exactly what's wrong with that, and I could probably
Mhm.
fix it, but I'm probably not going to because you're so far, you know what I'm saying? You're so far. Uh, now when you do it, you're doing it with a purpose. Like to do that now, to go backwards and do it now would be like something that you would do if when you didn't have, because I get it, it's different when you're doing your own music versus like if you're a professional engineer. When you're a professional engineer, you don't have no choice but to get it right now. But when you're the person that's doing it and it's your own music, like you said, you're making it on your own time. You could afford to put some love into it, a little time into it. You'll get to it when you get to it, type of thing. And
Yep.
and now where you are, when you create the song, you pretty much already know what it is that you're gonna do to it anyway. So you just kind of do it.
Yep.
As far as your first performance, the very first time you hit a stage, man, tell me, walk me through, what you're going through, bro. I mean, I imagine at this point you've already recorded songs, so that's different. But the first time, you're getting ready to take the stage and perform, what's in your mind, man, brother? What's your heart feeling like?
So I've actually, I had two first performances, so to speak. Like I said, I was part of a group, and I remember the first show him and I did, um, and it was crazy to me because again, I'd sung in choirs, I'd sung in front of people, I'd been on stage in front of people watching and never thought anything about it. But the first time getting on stage doing it like that, it was intimidating, and I know, I probably flubbed over a few words and stuttered here and there and kind of got the butterflies and stuff like that. But it was cool because I had somebody to kind of play off of with me who, the guy I made music with, he was a very confident person. He knew what we were doing, so it was easy to kind of just run with him and kind of feed off of that energy and all right, we got this. The first time I ever hit a stage by myself was in Louisville, Kentucky. A buddy of mine, shout out Be Good, the artist. Y'all don't know who he is when you're watching this. I promise you, you need to go look him up. Dude's music's phenomenal. He's also one of the most solid dudes I've met in this music business. I've been friends with this dude for years. He had been trying to get me to come to Louisville back when I was part of a group, and we could never make it happen. He found out I was back in Kentucky and was doing music again and doing it on my own. Reached out and he's like, "Man, the same offer's still there that's been there all these years. Like, I do these masked up every year. Would love to see you come up." And I was like, you know what, man? At that point, I didn't even have, I think I barely had enough to do a 15-minute set of my new stuff. I could pull out some old stuff out of the catalog, but I really had probably 3 or 4 songs at that point that I could perform that were new, that were mine. And I jumped on the opportunity, man. And it's crazy. Those guys at that venue, Christian Skyfire is another one. He still tells the story every day. That show, in particular, I'm sorry. A couple days before I was supposed to go up there, I was still living in Hopkinsville at the time. Louisville was about a 3-hour drive. My car started acting up, and I could have easily just, took that excuse and been like, maybe the time ain't right. Maybe I need to wait. Maybe this is something telling me, hold off. And instead, I was like, nah, screw that. I went and bought a Greyhound ticket, drove down to Clarksville, Tennessee, hopped on a Greyhound at 10 o'clock in the morning out of Clarksville, Tennessee, got to Louisville, Kentucky about 5 o'clock that night, took the city bus all the way on the other side of town, and then walked about a mile to the venue, went and did my show, had to take an Uber back to the Greyhound station at 2 o'clock in the morning to hop back on the Greyhound and ride back to Hoptown. And that experience, man, like, there was so much love already before I got there. Cause like I said, Be Good, he'd been a homie for years. And it's still to this day one of my favorite venues to go to because it's unlike anything. I tell everybody the vibe in itself, you can't pay for that type of vibe when you walk in there. So I was embraced by people who, were willing to listen to me openly and not judge me just by my appearance or have, preconceived notions about what I was going to do. So it made it a lot easier for me. And I was blessed in that opportunity.
That we all have those days, man, where it's not the sun isn't shining the brightest. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Life's not the best it's ever has been. It's really easy to get discouraged. What are some of those things that help pull you through to make sure that you do show up and continue to do this art that you love as far as music?
Honestly, man, I say it, and I'll keep saying it till I'm blue in the face. I do this. I love what I do. I have a passion for it. It feels like it's part of who I am. But a lot of why I do what I do is really trying to set an example for my kids that even when everything in the world, tries to deter you from chasing your dreams, you still go do it. Because at the end of the day, no matter what your religious beliefs are, no matter what any of that is, we get one physical life that we know right here, right now, sees the day today. And, I'd never wanted to be one of those people that was 60, 70 years old. And I wish I would have did this, or I should have done that, or what would have happened if I'd have did this. So, in those times where I'm getting discouraged and I feel like everything's working against me, I just got to remind myself that, my kids are watching. And if they see dad give up, then they think that's acceptable, to do. And I don't ever want my kids to give up on anything. I told my son one time, we were talking about, what we wanted to be, what they wanted to be when they grew up. And I told my son, I said, it doesn't matter what want to be. If you told me you wanted to be the best astronaut in the ocean in the entire world, I'm going to go buy you a spacesuit and a pool, and we're going to train you how to be an astronaut in the ocean. As crazy as it might sound to everybody else, I believe in you enough that I'm not going to tell you to be easy. I'm not going to say it'll just come overnight, but if you put in the work, you can go do it. And that stems from my childhood I remember being 8 or 9 years old, telling my parents I wanted to be a WWE wrestler, and pretty much getting laughed at. Like, you might want to just choose a career and accept the fact that you're probably going to work in a factory and you're going to be a slave to the system. It's good to have dreams, but you need to be a little more realistic, and I can't fault them for that. But at the same time, like, I feel like as a parent, we should always have that belief in our kids, no matter what it is they want to do. And we should always try to encourage them to do so. So that's really what fuels me a lot of days when I'm sitting here with writer's block and don't want to write, or, having them times where I'm like, man, I've thrown so much money at the wall and still not getting ahead. But, then I remember who's watching, and they might not see the whole story, but when it's all said and done, my kids are going to look back, and whatever they choose to do in their life, they're going to be like, man, y'all can think I'm crazy, but they thought my dad was crazy too, and he never stopped. So why should I?
That's not a bad legacy to leave, my man. Definitely admire what you're doing there. Got a couple more questions, and I appreciate the time, brother. The name Obsolete, especially, you do spell it a little different. Where did that come from, boss?
So it's a combination of things. A lot of that inspiration came from Jeff Hardy. He's got a band called Peroxygen. He's got a song called Obsolete. Um, Big fan of Jeff Hardy. Always have been over the years. And then really the name in itself, like, that's kind of how I felt my whole life. Like, I've kind of felt like I was obsolete. I was kind of the guy in the corner, doing my own thing to my family. I was there, but wasn't. It's like, and I knew that I'm different. I wanted to stand out. And I tell everybody I put my heart and soul in my music. This is me. I mean, I don't, I try to make music that people like, yes, but I make music for me. This is my outlet. This is my means of therapy. And I put my heart and soul in it. So when I started spelling obsolete various ways, I spelled it like that, and it just stuck because, like I said, the soul is in the middle of it. And that's me. I put my soul into everything I do.
Facts. That's deep, man. That's deep. That's deep, definitely. Um, in the future, you know what I'm saying? If you could have a dream collab, man, who may be some of the artists that you hope to work with before you call it the end of the day. They don't necessarily have to be mainstream artists. It's a great opportunity to even mention the independent artists if some. But we're just curious before it's all over, before Absolute decides.
Luckily for me, I've been blessed to work with a lot of independent artists that I believe, and have a lot of love for. I tell everybody I'm a fan of music first. Music was a part of my life before I ever started doing it. So I always support my homies. And even if, their music ain't something that I'd listen to every day, I still support, because at the end of the day, having the support is a big thing. So luckily for me, I've been blessed. I've had a lot of features with a lot of guys that I've watched, do music for years. I've got people constantly reaching out, wanting to work with me. So I'm always doing features, especially with my independent guys. Big mainstream, if I had to name two off the top of my head, of course, the first one's going to have to be Eminem. I know a lot of people feel the way they do about that man. He played a huge role in my music life, my career. So to share a song with him, I mean, that would just, you could almost die happy at that point. And Jelly Roll would be another one, man, because again, those two have played very pivotal roles in my life. In some of my darkest moments, their music is what helped pull me out of those places. So to have the opportunity to share, a song with those guys, I couldn't. There's no amount of money in the world that could put a price tag on how that would feel.
Bet. If there was a cause or something that you want to bring more awareness in the world to, because you have a platform, what would that be?
Honestly, man, something that's near and dear and personal for me. Rights of a father. Like I tell people all the time, and I'm not going to get too much into that backstory, but us dads, we have kids, and if it don't work out with the mom, we always have to fight just for our basic rights. And I think it's crap. I think the system has been flawed for years, and it's changing. I see a lot of changes happening, and there are changes for the better. But unfortunately, it's still something that I don't think a lot of people realize. How many dads I know personally that have to deal with similar situations like what I'm going through, who and it's hard, man. It's different if we did something to deserve, to go through this, but to just have to fight for our basic rights as a father, it's crazy to me. So that's something that is definitely near and dear to my heart that, one day I plan to start something along those lines, whether it be, you know, advice for people, just opening up like a podcast for people to come on and talk about problems and solutions, or something along those lines. Is something I'm very passionate about.
Well, brother, when you decide to do that and take that step, just know you got a friend in me, and I definitely hold that issue myself very personal, close to heart. For those who are aware of my story, so when you said that, man, you spoke directly to me, and I would definitely get on board with supporting that and sharing that for sure. Uh,
Definitely.
and the last couple of seconds, like I said, we I go back and edit these to make sure that your tags come up on the video when you're saying this as you're speaking this. So if you could please go ahead and let our listeners and viewers know where they can follow you, find your information, find your music, things like that, and your tags, so that hopefully as you gain new fans watching this, they can jump on board, man.
Man, I tell everybody on all social platforms, all streaming platforms, it's at Obsolete. As long as you spell it Obsouleet, you can find me everywhere. So much so you could just put that in Google and it'll bring me up right there at the top. You can find everything from these interviews like I'm doing with you right now, to my songs on Spotify, to my Facebook page. Like I said, it's all in the spelling, man. As long as it's spelled right, I'm easy to find, and I did it that way for that very reason.
Absolutely. Well, we definitely appreciate you, boss. We can't wait to see the success that you have coming to you, the progress that you have, the way that your music influences others to be the best them they could be, man. I definitely vibe with your energy. I'm loving what you do with your music. The fact that you make sure that it makes sense as far as what it is that you're approaching, as far as subject matter. You make sure that you're topic and it's something that can be felt. I'm really looking out for you, man. Absolutely. So until the next time we have opportunity to meet, which I try to do this every 4 to 6 months, just to see what's going on with you. We hope that you continue to be great, brother, and we'll be watching.
All right, man. I appreciate it. I hope the same for you. And one more before I go. Friday the 13th, Diaries of a Nomad will be live on all streaming platforms. DistroKid kind of messed me up. It was supposed to drop last month. I had to switch distribution companies and get it all uploaded, but it will be live Friday the 13th. So y'all be sure to check that out. And yeah, a lot of good content. So,
That's January Friday 13th, correct?
yep, January, Friday the 13th.
All right, we'll definitely be putting this out as well as a fly. If you got album art for it, make sure you send it to me, man. I'll get it in the magazine this month. All right.
Most definitely. I'll shoot that over when we get off here then.
I appreciate you, boss. Until then, take care, man. Keep being great. You heard me?
You do the same, boss. I appreciate you. Peace.
Peace.